I think we're fixed.
Yes. So I introduced you while you were fixing the audio technical issues. But
Okay.
so I was going to ask you if that is correct, but you didn't hear any of that.
It sounds like it was perfect to me.
It was perfect. Okay.
It was great.
What do you want to add? I just basically mentioned the Canada's Freedom Convoy, that whole situation. I don't know if people are familiar with that. If you want to add to that, I talked about your free speech activism, you being against government overreach, Bill C-63, and also its implications on free speech. I think people might not be familiar with that. So maybe you want to add a little bit more detail to all of that before we jump into it.
Yeah, well, I think some maybe additional background is long prior to the trucker convoy, I had run for federal office for the Conservatives, and so I'm well abreast to the the political establishment and how things really work on the inside. Part of the reasons we were successful in building out the trucker convoy and building it into a global phenomenon. My background is I was always kind of a small business guy, entrepreneurial. Didn't like politics, still don't like politics, but it just became this necessary evil, and got sick and tired of the nonsense that we were seeing going on in the world, and thought, man, maybe I should get involved in politics and see if I can be one of the people to help move the needle a little bit. And the next thing I knew, a few years later, I was on Tucker Carlson and Jordan Peterson's podcast talking about freedom and having our bank accounts frozen. So you never know how life is going to change in the future.
That was insane when that happened. First of all, I have to apologize because back when that happened, I assumed that you guys are, your views were different. And then when I looked at it, you guys were a lot more reasonable than what I assumed. That whole protest, I think, even though I knew that, many times mainstream media, they make people seem more radical or crazy, even if they aren't. I should have known that because that happened to me, but I still was fooled, and I thought that you guys are, I don't know, when at the beginning before we went live, I asked you if you believe that the COVID virus was a hoax, and you said no, and then I asked you if you're anti-vaccine. May I say that? Actually, I should have asked your permission.
You can say whatever you want. I'm not shy.
Okay. No, because that was a private conversation. And then you said no. You said that you're vaccinated. And I'm like, okay, this is like, I had the picture that they painted of you guys and everything that you were doing was so different from when you actually you have to actually talk to people. And again, it makes a lot of sense because a lot of people hate me. And then they meet me, and they're like, "Wow, you're not as aggressive as we thought you were. You're not this crazy maniac that wants to go, I don't know, delete Muslims."
Most people are reasonable, but the legacy media thrives on people who are not paying attention and are half paying attention and not thinking. And that's why the headlines, I like how Scott frames it, that the headline of dog bites man doesn't get views, but man bites dog, that's what gets views. So that's why everything's sensationalized, and everybody is a straw man of themselves, and it's not even remotely true. Like, I apparently was a Jewish Nazi during the trucker convoy.
Oh, okay.
Who was anti-vax, even though I'm vaccinated. And the whole protest was against coercion. That's what it was about. It's about freedom and the ability to make our own decisions. There were lots of people amongst us that were vaccinated, often because they had no choice. And then the government decided to shut down the border and then prevent them from returning to Canada. So they started trucking across the border. That's what it ended up. And if you looked at the policies were really seditious in nature. And that's what we were all unified against. That's why we kind of focused on messaging. It was about ending mandates and ending ArriveCan, because that's data tracking by the government. I can decide not to use Facebook if I don't want to be data tracked, but I can't decide not to use my own government. And that's when things went too far. And I explained that on Tucker Carlson.
Is that when you became a free speech activist and became, an activist against government overreach, or were you in this before that happened?
I kind of hate that word activist. I'm not an activist. Okay. I'm just like anybody else, just annoyed with everything going on, sort of thing. And, take the skills that I learned as an entrepreneur in terms of, organization, communication, that sort of stuff, and just applied it to this to hopefully put an end to the chaos. But particularly when I was involved in politics, I was probably, I don't think there's too many people who would disagree with this, one of the most outspoken people within the conservative movement on the topic of Islamic extremism and money laundering through NGOs and some of the really dangerous things that are occurring here. And it's really frustrating because much of what myself and other people were concerned about, that warned against, is now transpiring. And for 4 years, I produced a podcast for an intelligence analyst who was an expert, particularly in the Muslim Brotherhood and their mechanisms for moving money around and their entire infrastructure. So during those 4 years, I became very, very well versed in it. Now, why did I decide to do that? Because my business was on a university campus. And in 2012, the 2012-2013 year season, something happened. It was like somebody turned a switch, and everyone became crazy slowly over time. The students and the faculty just went full postmodern collectivist in terms of their worldview. And, previous to that, you get to know students over a few years. They become regular customers and stuff. So you get to know them, and they go to school, they get their degree, and they move on with life. Great. But something changed. All of a sudden, midway through their second year, it's all the patriarchy, and everybody's oppressed, and their society is, rape culture. And remember, Anita Sarkeesian was testifying at the UN, and Gamergate was going on. So that's when I really saw it from a more granular perspective on the university campus, and that's what led me to eventually deciding, this idiot counselor that we have in our neighborhood or in our riding, who is one of the founders of Queers Against Israeli Apartheid. Well, we just make her look a little stupid. And I did. And it was a lot of fun. And so I just continued with politics.
How bad are things in Canada right now, really? Because I hear a lot of bad news regarding free speech, regarding Islam, the spread of Islam, and then also the influence of Islam in politics and government overreach and wokeism in universities. But is it some exaggeration there, or is it really as bad as some people suggest it is? Can you paint a picture for us?
I think it depends on your knowledge and level of awareness on these sorts of issues. So, I lived in South America for quite a bit, and you could live in Colombia and think, oh, there's no problem here. Everything's fine. Get on my regular day, go to work, go to the mall, go for restaurants. Everything's fine. Because the average person is not attuned to understand, looking around them, who's a narco, who's a paramilitary, who's part of a business mafia. People don't often see that because they're unaware of it. Canada's the same way. If you're in Canada, you think, okay, economically, there's some stupidity going on and whatever. But if you understand how to identify somebody as a Muslim Brotherhood extremist, and you know what to look for, now you're starting to see it all over the place. When Mark Carney spoke at an extremist organization that not only shouldn't have a license to operate, they should all be deported along with their anchor babies. But he speaks at their event and says, Muslim values are Canadian values. Well, that organization's not Muslim values. That organization is extremist values, Islamist values, like ISIS. And we'll get in that conversation later, I'm sure. But so yeah, if you know what to look for, and you understand that Canada is the #1 country in the world right now for laundering money for terrorism organizations, then yeah, it's quite bad. But if you're an average person that's completely naive about how the world really works on some of these planes, then yeah, you think it's fine.
Okay, two points. First of all, I don't really believe that Muslim values and ISIS values are separate.
Yes.
I think the reason why many Muslim people are good people is not because they have proper Muslim values, it's because they're ignoring Muslim values. Okay, so I think the actual Muslim values, I mean, I read the Quran multiple times, I studied the Hadith, I studied the Tafsir, and the Islamic values are ISIS values, right? And again, if you see Muslims who are good people, it's because Islamic influence on them is less compared to ISIS or
I agree 100%.
Taliban. Oh, okay. With regards to, so you're saying that if you know where to look, you will see that it's a big deal. Okay, but why would how does this impact an average Canadian? Like if I don't go mess around and I wouldn't find out, then why should I care as a Canadian if it's not going to influence my life? Like why is this a big deal?
Because it doesn't influence on your life right now. It influences it over time. And the strategy that they use and the tactic that they use, should I say, is political entryism. And this is why you're seeing more, quote, diversity in policing, in law enforcement, for example. There's, for example, somebody I know was very in tune with the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. And she was telling me, at some point I might have her in a space to explain this in detail, but she was telling me that while she was very vocal about this and in communication with several people that she knew in law enforcement, after what it was 59 people, I think, were killed there, and a couple hundred were mutilated and injured in that shooting. When she was pushing people she knew on the police force that you need to show the cultural relation to this shooting, that the guy was full extremist, just like the January 6th shooting at the Fort Lauderdale airport. He was a convert, and that got swept on the rug as well. And she had one of the cops say to her, listen, a friend of hers, he said to her, look, it's not going to go anywhere. We're not going to be able to communicate that way. And I'm going to tell you why. We have a guy on the force now. His wife is a hijabi. So if we bring this even into the conversation, we're going to see grievances with the union. We're going to see complaints to other people in law enforcement that racist, bigot, blah, blah, phode, whatever. And that forces everybody to be silent. It's a mechanism for censorship. And this is the problem with having people with alien values in our society in positions in government, policymakers, or in law enforcement, that they are leading the way for self-censorship in the West. And people are afraid to talk about what everyone can see as clear as day right in front of their eyes.
Well, I mean, that's a very good point. The way, I don't know if you agree with this, but the way I see it, which I think you would agree, is that if you are worried about free speech and government overreach, and you should be always worried about that, because all the other rights that we have is based on this fundamental right. Like if you lose that, then the other rights, I mean, if you're fighting, we have political rights, we have social rights, we have economic rights. And among all these three, the political rights are more important because those two other types of rights, you can get them if you have the political rights, right? And when it comes to the political rights, your freedom of expression is the most foundational, because every single other right, if you want to fight for every single other right, this is the right that you need to be able to go get those rights, right? So that's why this is so foundational and so important to fight for. There's no other right that is more important to fight for. And the way I see it is the situation right now in Canada, whatever level we are at, is probably going to get worse because of the people who are coming in who have values that would vote in a way that is probably not in line with more freedom of expression. It's probably in line with wanting more government overreach and more restriction of free speech and other types of freedom, more restrictions of other types of freedom. And that's why, because they would vote like that, that's why I am worried that we're moving in the wrong direction. Is that your assessment as well?
Yeah, I would agree. I think many of the, for some reason, pre-selected cultures that are being brought into many places in the West, there are people who are very collectivist in nature with a high degree of ethnocentrism. And Westerners don't even know what that means half the time because, God bless them, we're all the same. We're all get along. But there's a reason when you see certain communities you see them in their videos, only go to a doctor from our community, an accountant for a community, because they're building ethnic silos within our country that does not participate with the rest of society. If you're not going to be a non-participant in the culture, then you're not part of the culture. This is the new wave of, they always complain about colonialism. This is what they're doing. And they're utilizing. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. This is why when you go to certain places in Canada now, if you don't speak Urdu, you can't talk to anybody. It's just the way it is. Like you want to go to Tim Hortons, you got to order with the app because you don't speak the language. And it's particularly frustrating for me, especially the idiots. You're like, oh, you're racist. I mean, I don't get that a lot, but when I moved to South America, I was told quite directly, listen, you either learn Spanish or you get kidnapped. I'm like, okay, well, that's one hell of an incentive. I guess I'm going to learn Spanish. And, within a couple of months, I spoke enough that I could get in a taxi and not get kidnapped. And I integrated. I didn't impose my value system on Colombian society with my friends who I got to know and all that sort of stuff. I integrated and respected their culture. But that's not what's being afforded to people in the West. And I think that's largely because what we're seeing is a calculated political tactic, as was outlined by Hassan al-Banna, specifically when he said that's what we're going to do.
I might disagree a little bit here. I'm okay with trying to crush and destroy other people's culture, even if it's in their home territory, as long as the culture that you're replacing it with is superior. So I think, like, when it comes to Western country, if the reason why I'm resisting these cultures from coming in is not because this is our culture, so we have to respect it. It's because these cultures are superior. It's not because, these are Western, we don't want your non-Western culture. I mean, if your non-Western culture were superior, we would welcome it. Like, bring it on, and we will replace what we have with what you have. But it's not superior, it's inferior. And I think the way I look at it is superior cultures and inferior cultures. And I'm completely okay with going out and destroying inferior cultures wherever we find them. Not by force, obviously, but by advocacy. But I'm okay with going to Colombia, I don't know, Indonesia, anywhere, and say, like, yeah, your culture is shit, and we're here to destroy it. Because this is a superior way of living. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all right. So I think to argue your point, yes, cultures are all different, and Colombian culture is very different than Indonesian culture. It's much more aligned with our culture. It's Western culture. Right. I mean, it's somewhat would say loosely a product of the Enlightenment, and I think that's what we're discussing. Individualistic cultures versus collectivist cultures. And this is why, for me, that I try to communicate to regular people that framing of the Red-Green Alliance. They are both collectivists. Bitcoiners sometimes get confused by this. They know they hate communism, but they don't understand the dangers of this Islamist collective that has brought itself into North America. And I'll give you an example. Somebody I know who was a teacher many, many years ago, this is now going back, 20 years ago. He was teaching in a school, like the end of his career sort of thing, doing what's called LTOs. So a few weeks at one school, a few weeks at another school sort of thing. And he was in the lunchroom. And there were this particular school had been completely converted to essentially being Somali. The entire school was Somalian. It's like you took Mogadishu and you put it in one block of Scarborough. That's where he was teaching. And so he was in the lunchroom with a couple of women who were hijabis, who were really nice, very respectful, very kind to him. And they said to him, you know, you guys, your culture is in a lot of danger here. Remember, this is 20 years ago. And he said, why? He said, you don't understand something. When clearly their husbands were a little bit, you know, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs sort of thing, a little nuts. And they knew it, but they were more moderate. And they said, the reason we're coming here is because my husband or his friends, or they can't get away with this nonsense in an Islamic country. Because if they try to cite, you know, this is my right as a Muslim under the Sharia, they'll get laughed out of the room. But here, you say the word, oh, Sharia, and this is my culture, everyone backs off and turns into a coward and won't challenge them. So she said the reason the extremists are coming here is because they can get away with things they can't get away with back home. And Imam Tawhidi recently, in the past couple of years, explained that. I think he was either in Europe, I think he was doing interviews explaining that, saying, you've taken the garbage that we didn't want, and you've now weakened your culture. So don't complain about the Islamic world or the Middle East getting more strong. Maybe it's you've weakened yourself, you know?
But I mean, that's a good example because, you know, I think one thing that Westerners are not doing well is that they're not playing a good offensive game, right? I mean, even the ones, I'm not talking about the ones, the woke and the leftists and the people who think that we're racist for saying these things. I'm talking about the Westerners who are concerned, justifiably concerned. They're against mass migration. They see the dangers of Islam. However, they're only playing a defensive game. Mm-hmm. And I think that they're going to lose. Even the concern was, if you're just playing defense, because your enemy has a huge base of operations, and they're going to come at you from so many different angles, and you're not going to be able to every hole that you cover, they're going to come at you from another direction. And also, this is not just a migration; it's also an ideological fight. I mean, they already have enough people in your country that even if you manage to get migration to zero, there is already enough people there to just spread the ideology now. So it's also an ideological battle. So I don't think people understand that you need to go on the attack mode. And you need to go, given that they came for your base, you need to go for their base. You cannot just be like, oh, we respect other people's culture. I mean, they don't respect yours. Right. Mm-hmm. And again, I think this is not a Canadian fight. This is not an American fight. This is a global battle. And a lot of the people who are seeing the concern, they're patriotic, but they're patriotic to the point that they are isolationist in the sense that, oh, we don't want to have anything to do with other countries. Well, if you want to win this fight, you need to actually go on attack mode. You cannot be isolationist. You need to actually get involved internationally. This is a global fight. And if you're fighting a local fight and they're fighting a global battle, you're going to lose because they see it globally and you see it locally. And that's why I'm saying that we have to see it in the sense of superior culture versus inferior culture. And I wasn't talking about Colombians. I was talking about Islam, for example, as an inferior culture, right? Islam is an inferior culture. And if you are worried about the influence of Islam in Canada, then you should fight Islam globally, not just Islam in Canada, because there's not enough ways for you to just cover the ways that is coming at your country. You need to go at the base of Islam in Islamic countries and fight Islam over there. I don't know, maybe that's a bit too radical for some people. Yeah.
No, a couple of things. Firstly, the reason we don't fight offensively is, the offense you see in the West is in the woke left sphere. And you know why? Because we're working. We're busy. We're producing. We have businesses. We have jobs, responsibilities. Some people have families. Like, we don't have time for this nonsense, these games. Like, we don't have time to. We got our own lives to lead and to build, and that's kind of the problem. But where did you see a change? During the trucker protests, and look how harshly the government behaved, because the people who actually pay the taxes of this country for the first time said, enough, now we're protesting. And that's why they panicked and freaked out and didn't know how to respond. Because now the working class, and not just the working class, like during that period, man, I talked to working class people, construction people, hedge fund managers, politicians, bankers, doctors, all aspects of society, all demographics, all socioeconomic classes. I had private conversations with during that protest. And goddamn the CBC to say, oh, they're fringe. What are you talking about? Unlike you idiots in politics, we managed to transcend all demographics. We got everybody together because everyone was fed up. So you're right that we don't fight because we're busy and we don't have the time for it. But the government forced our hands, and we did. And then something else,
Right.
when you say this is a global issue, I gave this speech now, I don't know, 6 years ago, a long time ago. It was a free speech conference around M103, if you remember that. And I explained that at that time, I have a friend of mine in Colombia I'm very close with. He had moved from Amsterdam to Colombia to be safe because of all the diversity that would mug him every time he would be coming home from the office. So one particular case where not only did they mug him, they got into a fight. He's a big, strong guy. He's like 6'5". So good luck mugging him. That's why they always try to attack him. And he just dragged the two of them into the police station, which was right in front of where he was mugged and stabbed. And he said, these guys just tried to kill me. And so what they did is they rushed him to the hospital. And the next morning, my friend was charged with excessive use of force in self-defense, which is why he decided to move to America. Yes. So he moves to South America. Huh? Yeah. This is what's going on there. He moves to South America. And what did he tells me, you're never going to believe it. I saw a girl in Medellin with this, a niqab. Why? Because they've built a super mosque. There are now 3 large mosques in Colombia that are trying to convert the population and engage in da'wah. And it's the most extremist elements. And now they are working within the drug cartel structure. And this is why this is so important, because you see this mending. I mean, they've been part of the same fight for a long time, but it's the I don't want to say alliance, but the parallels of or the intersection between narco trafficking and Islamic terrorism has never been so evident. Why do you think Trump is going to Venezuela? Like, why do you think they have 7 massive ships, a nuclear sub or 2 nuclear subs, and 4,500 troops, Marines going down to the region? Why do you think they are? Because they took out Hezbollah. They took out the Israelis just took out Houthis. They've weakened the Iranian regime like they've never been weakened. What's left? Venezuela. And in Brazil, what does Brazil have? Hezbollah. That's why you're seeing this action, because the intersection between trafficking or narcotraficantes and Islamic terrorism around the world. And we need to do something now. The problem is that we have on the grassroots level is people just don't understand this because they've been so brainwashed by media, but more and more people are aware of this issue than ever before. That is probably the only good thing that came out of October 7th, is the number of people who were liberals and who still identify as liberal, but now turn around and think and reach out to people like myself and others and say, okay, I guess you were right. What's going on? Can you explain it all to me? So because of that, I've never been actually so optimistic I think we're in a better position than we were 5 years ago.
You are optimistic? Because my sense is that things are getting worse. What are you're getting?
Well,
give me some optimism.
yeah, I think things are getting worse as the Islamists, and if I can explain to you why I use that word afterwards, but the Islamist infrastructure, money laundering, NGOs, all that sort of stuff, they are advancing in politics. But finally, there are people, Canadian and U.S. politics, especially U.S. politics. I gave a speech in December. I've given a few since then, but in Florida on national security threats to the United States coming from Canada and Latin America, which I kind of outlined all of this sort of stuff. People have never been so willing to absorb material now, and they've never been so curious about it and becoming vocal, especially in the United States. But that's now starting to happen in Canada as well, which I've never seen before. And it was very frustrating for many, many years while I was involved in politics, because this was an issue I really cared about. I learned about it 30 years ago, actually. That finally, people are willing to listen. And, hats off to Elon Musk for opening up Twitter and for people able to kind of broadcast what's going on around the world. And now even regular people understand they may not say it. They may be afraid to be harassed, and they're not, political activists themselves, but they know there's a problem now.
But is that enough? Because I feel like I kind of, even if that's growing, more people becoming aware is growing. And thank you for what you do. I mean, I was going to say thank you for your activism, but you don't like that word. Thank you for all your effort. But I just think that the evil is growing faster than the response, and this Islamic virus is spreading into Canadian politics, U.S. politics, British politics. I don't know about Germany and France, to be honest, and if people know, let me know in the chat. But they are just they're growing their tentacles, and it's going to become very. I think it's going to be impossible to actually get them out now. Like you might, by raising awareness, you are going to be able to increase some resistance to it, some pushback to it. But they are here to stay, and they're going to grow. But the awareness and all of the work that people are doing is just going to make maybe their growth slower by a bit, but it's not going to stop them from. It's not going to make them go away, and it's not even going to stop the growth. That's my impression. Maybe I'm wrong.
I was talking to a friend of mine who had Russell Ackoff as a professor. If you know who Russell Ackoff is, just a brilliant thinker and a brilliant professor who died many years ago. But what Russell Ackoff would teach was, about human motivation, that people don't change. People don't change until they have to change. And when they have to, that's when the pendulum swings from one side all the way other to the complete side very quickly, because they become reactionary. And people like myself have been vocal about this issue because we don't want that to happen, because when it's reactionary, that's when it gets violent, unfortunately. And so we're trying to speak up on this issue so that doesn't happen. But the reality is that's just human behavior. I don't think it's quite so dire in that people won't respond. Something I learned a number of weeks ago, somebody I've met over the past, 6 months, a year, who has regular interactions with diplomats around the world. He said this publicly, so I think I can share this. He said it was shocking to him and to some others that in a meeting with Saudi diplomats, because as you know, even the Saudis and the UAE in particular are concerned about this issue, and they want to build a modern economy themselves. And So not saying there's not problems in those countries too. We know there are. Nothing's perfect. But anyways, he brought up, I think he brought it up, or the people he's with brought up what's happening in Europe. Like, what are we going to do about Europe? Things are getting a little out of control in certain countries. And this is from the Saudi diplomats said, we don't even bother with Europe. I said, why? Said, in our estimation, certain countries in Europe have 2 years. That's it. They have 2 years left. It's going to be completely controlled by Islamic extremists and, many of these proxy organizations, whether it's the IRGC or Muslim Brotherhood or a hybrid of the two or whatever, Jamaat Islami or whatever. And in 2 years, they will fall. People won't see it because it'll all be behind the scenes. This political entryism we're talking about. And then the ratchet of authoritarian grip will get to tighten more and more. And several years after that, this is my estimation, a few years after that, it's going to look like Syria. That's what's going to happen. So when people in Canada and the United States see the footage that France has turned into Syria, maybe they'll wake up. Maybe they'll understand, bringing in jihad terrorism into their government over the past 30 years, that probably wasn't a good idea. And then you'll see, for sure in the United States, Canada, I'm not sure, but you'll see a massive pendulum swing.
Yeah, isn't it too late by then?
That's for France. For France. But you know what? It's good. The French like a civil war. They always want to protest in war. Good. Go ahead. You're going to have to do that now. You've built your own grave, sort of thing. But that's, unfortunately, that might be what has to happen. Unfortunately.
But even if that, I don't know if it would happen like that, but even if that happens, you will still not be able to, what are you going to do about it? What will happen? Let's say people are like, in Canada are like, oh my God, that's horrible. We don't want that. They're already here. They're already citizens. They already have their mosques. They already have their free speech. They already have their inferior culture. What are you going to do now? They're already deep ingrained with the government. What's going to happen? There's nothing you can do.
No, you will see people will then become on board with what is politically incorrect today will be completely acceptable 10 years from now. And you will see some extreme rhetoric in terms of, we want all of their nationalized passports revoked. We want all their anchor babies deported. And whoever is going to do that is going to get our vote. And you will see that's going to be the talk of the day 10 years from now. Now we're thinking it's crazy. Now we're thinking about people are never going to be that way. But never underestimate people's desire to survive, which is the greatest moral good. The first thing is survival, and our survival is at risk.
Yeah. I don't see any mechanism for us to change the Canadian laws to the point where people who are citizens would lose their citizenship because of having bad ideas.
I hear this a lot from people who are, especially in libertarian circles, of which I am fiscally quite libertarian, as you can imagine, as a Bitcoiner. And I hear this all the time. Oh, the policies are this, whatever. You know what? Jean-Luc Picard said it best. Life is an exercise in exceptions. And when things become very dire, we have an amazing ability to justify very extreme exceptions if we need to. And that's what will happen.
Wouldn't you be against that? Isn't that too much government overreach for the government to come and say that, oh, you don't get to be a citizen because you have bad ideas?
Life is an exercise in exception. Those who hold alien values from a inferior culture, who do not want to participate in Western culture, do not belong here. And that's how everyone will think when it gets bad enough.
So it will not be based on the countries that they came from. It's going to be based on their values. Like, we're going to have a value test, and if you don't pass the value,
well, you're getting very granular in my prediction. Okay, I'm just talking general, right? Like, There are so many variables that can happen that can lead to things. So that is a warning to the other side who's way too confident. You don't think the people who descend from the empire that dominated the world won't get violent with you? You don't know what violence is. They really don't.
Yeah. I mean, I come from, I was born in Iran, so
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. The amount of we lost our country with a really heavy dose of violence more than 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And again, the reason why I might be a pessimist is because we lost our country to the unity between leftist and Muslim Islamic forces.
That's right.
And again, this is why we're trying to war. We Iranians are trying to war on Western countries, because before 1979, if you predicted that Iran will fall to an Islamic takeover, people would think you're nuts. The country was becoming more progressive. It was becoming more modern. It was becoming more educated. Everything was improving, and within a year, everything, the leftists and the Islamic forces got united, and the country they toppled the government, and everything went to shit. And again, our king back then warned the entire world of this. He called it the unholy alliance of red and black. And again, it's black in Iran because Shia, the color for Shia is black, right? But again, this is around 50 years ago. Many Westerners are not even were even shocked for leftists and Muslims to unite with each other. Like, they couldn't even see why they would. Like, it was after 9/11. This was something that some people became familiar with, but for us, this is really old. This goes back to 1979. Like, we experienced this before, and because we already saw one country be taken down by disunity, I think a lot of Westerners need to listen to us Iranians and our warning. And that's why it might be you are more optimistic than me, but I mean, you might be right. But because I also might be right, I think we should take more extreme measures, in my opinion. I mean, I know you're busy, and I know you have jobs, and I know you guys have work and everything. I'm not saying every single person, but I'm just saying there's so much to lose, and I think you need to take more extreme measures now, and you need to take more extreme measures beyond your borders, not just in Canada, because the force is so much bigger. I mean, I don't have to tell you, okay? But if you see the Islamic forces in Canada, if you see how big they are at their base of their operation, they're so much bigger. They're so much more well-funded. They're so much more organized, and they have plans. They have plans for a global takeover. They're getting ready for the end times, right? And they are not kidding.
Yeah.
They're not kidding. They are really intending to go through all of this plan. And I'm not saying that they will succeed, but given how extreme the plan is, even though they won't succeed, I mean, I hope not, they won't succeed in a global takeover. The fact that that's their ultimate plan, that means the things that they will do to get there are going to be extreme. And they think that they're winning. They're seeing that they think that they're bringing an Islamic empire slowly. They think that they lost the hard power, the military confrontation. So they're now trying to win the soft battle, with soft power. They think that they're sending in their Trojan horses. They're like, we lost they with the technology and science, because the Jews control science and technology. They managed to steal the science that came out of the Islamic world during the golden age of so-called Islam. They stole that from us, and because of their scheming ways, their superior technology managed to beat us in battle. Okay, but they're deceived. But they say, like, they are deceivers, but Allah is the greatest of all deceivers, and we will win the final battle. And again, their way is to focus now on the soft power, which means sending Trojan horses in the form of ideological influencers and people, and basically breeding, just trying to demographically re-engineer the population. And that's basically is going to be, they're going to plant those seeds that eventually these children will grow, and they say that we can wait. They think Westerners are looking in 5-year results, 4-year results, like but they're thinking in 50 years. They think 50 years, even 100 years. So because the Westerners are thinking in terms of 4 years, but we're thinking in terms of 40 years and 50 years, we will eventually win. That's their mindset. And I think, like, sometimes they're right. Sometimes they are, I mean, because they're so ideological, they do many of them are willing to pay a heavy price now and live uncomfortable lives because they have a larger goal down the road in mind. So that is because of how crazy they are, they do have that advantage. But we need to know the nature of the threat and take it more seriously. I don't know. And I think we're not fighting enough. And I'm trying to invite more people to just go at the base of the operations and attack there. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that, they're so powerful and so strong until you make a joke about them that's funny, that everybody laughs, and then they can't handle it. Because as you know, satire is definitely frowned upon in that part of the world, is haram, from what I understand. And that is how you destroy them in the Western sphere, because we are the kings of mockery and a sense of humor. And when people see how weak they are, that they can't handle just basic ridicule, then we see that the emperor has no clothes, that they are extraordinarily weak. That's why they're so collectivist. And this is why, for me, it's important to get people to understand, to step away from the left wing, right wing. I mean, the two-party system is the United States, but that's not the whole world. And we're not so binary in how we view the world. Like people, am I conservative? Am I liberal? And like, we're all many things, we all have many things that infer who we are. So if we get more people to understand that framing of the world, so they don't get, some people are allergic to the label conservative, while others are allergic to the label liberal and objectivist and libertarian, same sort of thing. Start dropping the labels and see it's the individuals, the enlightened Westerners versus this collective mob, and people start seeing the world through that frame, and they start to mock it as an indicator of low IQ, that you have to be a collectivist when you don't have too many functioning brain cells. Then they all of a sudden become weak, and our society will have the same tolerance for them as they did the Bloods and the Crips during the 90s. And people just tell their elected officials, I don't even care, just get rid of it. That's what we'll get towards. And I think we're well on that path, actually.
Yeah, so you're right regarding how weak and pathetic they are when it comes to jokes and ridicule on an individual level. And again, that's why ridicule works, to disarm them on an individual level.
Yeah.
But them being offended is a meme, meme in a sense, not in the sense that people use it on, but and just like any other meme in society, it has its utility, and that's why it's there. So individually, you might be able to disarm somebody by ridiculing them, but collectively, this taking offense and reacting so aggressively actually does have a benefit for them, especially when they don't have the legal upper hand, when they don't have enforcement power. It's a way to signal to the members of the other tribe who is more, when the more offended you are, the more loyalty you're signaling to other tribes members regarding your standing within the tribe, right? So when you show offense, because if you don't show offense, you are not, you're not fighting for the honor of the prophet or the Quran or whatever. But it is ridiculous on an individual level, but collectively it works. I mean, it makes no sense individually. A lot of ridiculous things in religion, they make no sense because there's no objective. There is no way to defend it objectively and make sense of it, because it's not based on rationality on an individual level. But they work as in they are certain characteristics and certain behavior that makes the tribe stronger, and they just work as signaling to each other, or basically keeping everybody on the same page. So it does create some group strength, even if it doesn't, even though at the cost of the individual. I mean, I guess, and this is also why we're individualists, because we care about the individual, and people who are true collectivists, they are sacrificing the individual for the sake of the tribe. But I just want people to observe that some of the things that we see as weaknesses in Islam, yes, it's a weakness on an individual level because the individual is being sacrificed. But if you look at the evolution of the meme, you will see that it has its evolutionary purpose, and it does make sense for the tribe, and it does actually make the tribe stronger, unfortunately. So we do need to, I mean, I say this as somebody who's been fighting Islam for more than a decade right now. So, and I have mocked this many, many times, but yeah.
But when people in the West just get so tired of it, and the West are the people with the power. West is the society with power, specifically the United States. When they say, you know what, I don't care anymore. I just don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about whatever phobia, whatever. I don't care. Get them out. Just get them out. That's what's going to happen. And we're going to get to that path. So they can be the collective and meme and whatever and bitch and complain. We don't care. I already don't care. You don't care. And guess what? The rest of our culture will also not care and not be bleeding hearts. And the useful idiots, slowly over time, many of them are slowly waking up. Our job is to understand how to persuade those people. And we do a horrible job of that. And one of the countries, you know, people get upset when I explain this, but Israel is probably the worst country in the world in terms of persuading people to understand their framing of the world, because they don't put any resources and effort into it. And largely because it's very difficult to do. And there's also, you know, political complications as well. But I'm one of the many people trying to persuade them to learn how to influence people. And, you know, I started about, and I brought this up maybe a couple of months ago with some people who I think might be connected with being in an advisory role to think tanks in Israel, whatever. And I kept saying, you should have released those October videos immediately when the world was shocked. I know it's terrible. And I know the families would be horrified and mortified by it. I understand that. But you had the moment to seed that into people's subconscious, to see the level of savagery that you're up against. But as we always do in the West, and in Israel I consider part of the West, we always hold ourselves to a standard of a higher moral value. Unfortunately, if you're going to take out vicious savages, you need to be more vicious and more savagery. That's how Colombia saved itself. How did Colombia get rid of the narcos? You know what they did? They had a secondary off-the-books team of people within their military and intelligence structure, and they started kidnapping and torturing drug traffickers, the big guys, because that's what they would do to the population. You could be a girl walking home from the office or from school in Colombia and get kidnapped and be raped and gang raped and whatever they did with them, and then hung upside down from a tree and burned alive. That's what they did to people in Colombia. So what did they do? They started kidnapping them, torturing them, chopping them up into little bodies, and hanging them from the fence in the city center with a message that says, "Los Pepes, you're next." That's
just to be clear. You're not. That's not. Just to be clear. Well, I don't want to get my. You're not.
I'm not advocating. See, this is what they did. This is what they did, right?
Okay,
yes, sir,
okay.
YouTube,
I just wanted to make sure that's on record.
YouTube, we're not advocating this. I'm saying, but this is what they had to do, right? And this is
okay.
And this is well known in Latin America, unfortunately. And that has to be the degree of fear. That is what they will face if this doesn't stop.
So here's my suggestion. If you even are fighting locally, okay, because I know you might disagree with me, and people in the chat might disagree with me. I don't think the ones that have become citizens, I don't think there is any legal. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. Okay, I don't think there's any legal process, and there will not be any legal process for them to get them out. Okay.
Do you hold on? Whoa. Do you remember Bill C-24 when Harper was in power?
No.
That's exactly what Harper was trying to put into law.
Oh yeah, actually Trudeau and Harper debated that. Like he said, and Trudeau said a citizen is a citizen is a citizen. Right?
And 10 years from now, that will be completely popular and everybody will want it. People who have, the non-entryists, the people who have been born and raised here over.
Okay, maybe I don't know. Let's just maybe you're right. Maybe not. Okay, we'll see. Okay, but let's assume, let's consider my scenario, okay? Because I will tell you what, if you want to put fear in these people's hearts, this is what you do, okay? Let's assume that there will not be, the most you could do is stop the mass migration from continuing, okay? But the people who are here, they're here, there's nothing you could do about it, right? Because, I mean, if you're in a plan, you need to have a plan for every scenario, right? I think that you need to go for their children. Meaning that you need to take their children, bring it to our side. I'm very concerned
right now. Please explain that in content.
Meaning that you need to try to convince their children to join our side against their inferior values, right?
I'm glad you said that. Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And but the thing that you imagined that I was saying, that is actually less scary than what I just told you.
Yes.
A dead daughter to some of these people is less scary than a daughter that is dating a white man and she's wearing shorts and she's not praying and she's not fasting during Ramadan and drinking. Okay. They would actually, you know how scared you were at what you thought I was suggesting? That is not at all as scary as what I'm saying to you. This will scare the shit out of them. This is worse than death, especially when it comes to family. So this has two benefits, what I'm suggesting. Okay. First of all, if we're fighting an ideological battle, then let it be an ideological battle. Not let it be, don't make it a fight between people and people, right? So what I'm suggesting does not require treating people as evils, as enemy. In fact, we will respect them to get their trust enough to try to convince them. This would require reaching out, talking, dialogue, showing our superior way, showing our superior culture and its benefit. And here's the thing, this job is actually easier because our culture, this culture that we're advocating for, it sells itself. It is so good that it just sells itself. We just need to reach out. And I think sometimes the whole language of, maybe get them out might make this battle that I'm talking about difficult, because maybe instead of trying to, the ones who are now citizens, instead of trying to tell them that they need to get out, if we actually try to bring them in and remove the brainwashing, and I have had much success with this in the past couple of years, right? The values that we're selling are easy to sell. And I think, first of all, it's really scary, okay, if you want to basically use your strategy. Also,
hold on. Wait. I got to correct you.
Add numbers to our side.
I'm not advocating for that. I'm saying that's what's going to happen. I'm not saying I am for that. I'm saying that's what's going to happen. But to your point, I just want to hear your opinion on this, because I think we agree on this. Why do I use the word Islamist? There's a very specific reason. And that's around communication and meeting people where they are and trying to communicate around this forest of people who completely don't understand things and are very confused about how the world works right now. And I remember seeing, you'll probably be more familiar with this than I am, but I remember seeing a study from many years ago that I think it was Iran. It might have been the broader Middle East, but I think it was Iran, that 40% of either Iranians or Muslims in the Middle East are closeted atheists. It was a very
Zero.
high, it was a
Zero.
shockingly high number. There's
It was zero.
also, you hear from the left all the time, the people that are the victims of Islam are Muslims. They're the greatest victims. That is true because as individuals, there are many people who don't want to participate in this stuff. You know how I know? They are the people who come here and leak intelligence to bureaus, law enforcement, politicians, people like myself and others who understand this. They say, we came here to get away from this nonsense, but you're bringing them here and giving them power. I don't want to be part of that. I want to be part of Canada. So if we use the word, when people use the word Muslims to collectivize all of these people, that works to the advantage of the extremists. We should be doing what they do to us, which is divide and conquer, and allow an open tent for people who are closeted atheists, who are Muslims who don't want to participate in, the Muslim Brotherhood, Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb worldview, that they just want to get along and integrate, and they have no aspirations for takeover. Those are the people we need to give power to, and they then will become the strong voice to do exactly what you're saying. Those 40% that want to be atheists, they'll do the job for you. So it makes me crazy when people who are religious and Christian, many of my friends, that they're atheists don't believe X, or like, you're behaving like a leftist. The atheists should be our natural allies in the fight against extremism from that part of the world that has come to America. So what do you think about that? Tell me why I'm wrong.
So, no, you're right. Again, this is nitpicking, okay? So, and I don't
Yes,
expect
go ahead.
everybody to follow these words exactly, but I will explain it to you, and it doesn't matter as long as I get what people are saying. They don't have to use the same vocabulary as I am using, right? But I don't see it. I do see a difference between Muslim and Islamist, because we're talking about people. I don't see a difference between Islam and Islamism. So remember, in the category of so let's separate the people.
I didn't say Islam versus Islamism. I didn't say that. I just said Muslims and Islamists.
I know. That's why I'm agreeing with you. I agree. I'm agreeing with you, right? So most Muslims are good people. And I have Muslim friends who, for some reason, are working with me, even though they know I am aggressively anti-Islam, right?
Okay.
So I know it's possible, right? I actually have Muslim friends. I have Muslim friends who even congratulate me over my anti-Islam work, because it's like, I might not agree with you, but your passion and your dedication is admirable. Okay, so it is possible for Muslims to be like that, right? I know that. I mean, I had them on the channel, right?
Yeah.
So, but Islam. So when we're talking about the ideology, I don't want to separate it. I don't want to say political Islam, because anybody who reads the Quran will understand that this whole thing is political from beginning to end. Okay, there is no. If we say political Islam, they would suggest that there is a non-political Islam. There is no non-political Islam. Right? So yes, when it comes to people, you could differentiate between Muslims and Islamists. Fine, right? But when it comes to the ideology, there's no difference between Islam and Islamism. So I think we agree on that, right?
We do. Just for my framing, so you understand, I don't talk about so much the ideology. I leave that up to Robert Spencer and people like that, who are well more versed. Yeah, I think is amazing. I just care about people and the individual on the level and how to communicate. And because, look, at the end of the world, there's there's 1.5 billion people of the various sects of the Muslim faith. Also very important, various sects. You got to get people to, own their space, sort of thing. 1.5 billion people are not going to convert. They're not going to become atheists. It's just not practical. But and we often simplify this, and I see this on conservatives who start adopting leftist collectivist framing or philosophy in their arguments, when they say, because the Quran says this, therefore individual people believe X. Well, listen, there's 613 commandments in the Old Testament. How many do I do? I don't know, 2? Right? Like, people are complex, and people cherry pick what they align with, and they disregard and ignore all the stuff that they don't want that noise in their life. And we need to treat Muslims the same way that we treat other individuals from other cultures, and recognize the people who distinguish between, the literalists and the people who are, more moldable in terms of how they view the religion, and they adopt what they want and they ignore the stuff they don't want. And Christians do it, Jews do it, Hindus do it. Everybody does that. That's why the least persuasive word in the world is hypocrite. Because, as I said when we started, when Jean-Luc Picard said, life is an exercise in exceptions. We absorb what we think gives benefit to us, and we ignore the things that we think don't give benefit to us. And I think we should allow Muslims who don't buy into the extremist framing, we should allow them that freedom as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we should. I'm a free speech advocate.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking about fighting Islam, I'm not talking about forcing people out of Islam. I'm talking about talking to people about it.
Yeah.
And convincing
No, I get
them.
that. I get that.
Yeah. But so let me actually tell you, based on what you said, why we should actually care about the religion, not just Muslims, but actually the religious teachings as well, right?
Oh, no, we should. Of course. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, I agree with you. People are complex. And I agree with you that I've been fighting against Islam. My expectation is not for people, the vast majority of Muslims, to leave Islam, right? Mm-hmm. The way that we need to look at this is not Muslims who are, good people versus the more radical Muslims. I think it's a spectrum. And I think the fight is not between these Muslim radicals and Muslims who are good people. I think the fight is within every individual. Every person, Muslim or otherwise, are complex people, like you said, and we're all influenced by many different sources. I think what people make a mistake when they see a Muslim, because we use the word Muslim, it's not like the Islam, if they're good people, a better version of Islam is influencing them. Right? No, a Muslim is not just influenced by Islam. A Muslim is influenced by so many different things based on the environment they're in, based on their parents, based on their friends at school, based on the podcast they listen to, the YouTube video they watch, the movies that they watch, the comic books they read. So what I'm suggesting is not that a win in a Muslim is for a Muslim to leave Islam. If you're a Muslim, Islam is a small percentage of what influences how you think. Right? It could be 2%, it could be 5%, it could be 90%, and you would be ISIS. Mm-hmm. Okay, it could be. But what for me, a win is not, this was a Muslim and tomorrow he's not a Muslim. For me, a win is that yesterday Islam was influencing 10% of how he or she thinks. Today it's 8%. Right? That's a win.
Yeah, I would agree with that. For sure.
That's what I'm fighting for. I'm not asking for much. I'm not like, you're not. This is a win means that Muslims leave Islam.
No. And I wasn't. I hope I wasn't attributing that to you. I'm just talking broadly.
Yeah.
And you know what the problem is. And I'm sure
you
see this is an important thing. The problem is in Canada, we're going the opposite direction. So I remember one of the last few years I had my business on the university campus. There was a kid who would come in. He was, second year university. His name was Yasser, and Yasser came from Syria. And Yasser was like Night at the Roxbury's. Like he was wearing like expensive jeans. He was going to nightclubs on the weekend, asked me what's the best club for meeting girls and stuff. Like very... kind of modern, Western, normal kid who just wants to hang out, meet friends, and build his life while he gets his education. Nice guy. He was really nice. And then he eventually he was starting to have some difficulties. He met a girl, but she was back home. Wasn't sure if he liked her. Anyways, he was going through a tough patch, and he would come in and talk to me, and we'd spend 20 minutes talking and trying to give him a positive frame. Anyways, he eventually disappeared. And didn't see him for maybe 6 months or something like that. And then I was walking in front of Eaton Center, which is in the downtown core of Toronto at Yonge and Dundas, where they have all the, the pro-terrorism protests now. And I saw him in front of the Islamic booth, which is an extremist booth. And he was handing out flyers, come to Islam, and he was dressed like Osama bin Laden. He was wearing the white dress. He's wearing sandals. It was kind of winter, like fall time of year. The beard, like complete opposite of what he was. I barely recognized him. I said, Yasser, is that you? And you could see a little glimpse of the real him was in there. He's like, oh, hey, it's good to see you. How are you? And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing here? He said, things weren't going well for me, and I didn't meet anybody I liked. So, but I found a better path. I found my meaning in life. And I'm like, you might want to rethink that. But so the problem is in Canada, this is where.
What did he say? He said, I didn't what? I didn't find anybody that I liked.
Yeah, he's I guess he was having difficulty dating, difficulty integrating, finding people he liked, and he got depressed. And well, what do the extremists do? Like all, religious cults, they'll often exploit people who are in their weakest state in their life. And clearly that happened to him. And he said, I found my path forward. I'm like,
I'm so glad that you said that, because that makes my point, because a lot of people think I'm an extremist until they hear me that my offensive is befriending Muslims and talking to them.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you're such a radical, Armin. You want to destroy Islam. Yes, by becoming friends with Muslims, because that's how you that's how you lower their guard. Okay. And your example actually makes my point, because if you push again, I know a lot of people, because their country is being destroyed by these people, they want to become more aggressive against them. Yeah. But I promise you, the fight, if you want to win this fight, because they're sending in their Trojan horses, you need to become a little bit less revenge driven and send in your Trojan horses, emotional Trojan horses, by actually befriending these people instead of trying to, attack them individually, because that will backfire. Here, let me tell you, the people who are sending the Trojan horses, they would love it if you become hostile. They are feeding on the hostility. Yeah. And your example proves is an example. It doesn't prove it, but it actually is an exhibition of what I'm talking about, right? I think there's two fights to fight right now. One, locally, you need to go into these communities, you need to befriend them, and you need to talk to them, and you need to start grabbing them and bringing them out into your community. The person that you mentioned became radical because he couldn't find any friends. He couldn't find anybody that he liked. I'm pretty sure if he did find some people that he could relate to, he wouldn't have gone that path. That's strategy one. Strategy two is based on another thing you said. You mentioned in Iran, around half of the population has left Islam. Okay, so the fight against Islam, we might be losing it in the West right now, but we're winning it in the Middle East.
100%.
We're winning it in the Middle East. So we need to reinforce the places. We need to keep fighting that battle, because they're losing their home base. We're losing our home base. They're losing their home base.
And also, to prove your first point, or to add to it, should I say, it should be easier for us if we learn how to persuade and communicate with people. You know why? The other side is selling collectivism, submission, and essentially serfdom. We're trying to sell them freedom, the freedom to do what you want. And that, as you can imagine, for me, the trucker convoy, and why I'm such an advocate for Bitcoin and financial freedom, I'm one of those people where freedom is my core value. And I think there's a lot more of us than people realize. And I think there's a lot of people in there that they've been sold this idea that holding on to their religious collective is freedom. They don't understand that that isn't. That is, it's called submission for a reason. If you want true freedom, you're able to come out of that, and then you can build whatever destiny you want for yourself.
Yes, and that's why I'm saying that we have an easy job to sell what we have, but as long as we're proud of it. And this is our Berlin Wall moment, because when you can show how good our values are, you don't even have to make an argument for it. Like the people, like you could write papers about how bad communism is and how great capitalism is, and you could write articles and books. But when people see that, look, this is the east side of the Berlin Wall, and this is the west side of the Berlin Wall, you don't need to convince people anymore. You don't need to write articles or books about it. People can see the difference. And that's what we need to get better at. We need to show the difference in our lives, and to show that, first we have to be proud of it. We have to actually take pride in having a superior way of living and show our pride, and then display it. That displaying it will just attract people automatically. We don't even need to make much arguments. It's just so attractive. Our side is just so attractive. We just need to be better at demonstrating it, displaying it.
Which is what I think is the missed opportunity for countries like Israel, who should have been selling themselves as the freedom country in the Middle East. And had they started with that framing and positive framing, then it would have been a lot easier to get the rest of the world, whose principles are based on freedom or aspirational freedoms, to be like the United States. Then people would have been more willing to listen. But maybe that's something that the Iranian people can do. They can start pushing that dichotomy of, we haven't had freedom for 50 years. It's time we finally do.
Yeah, and also Israelis are getting better at it. Like, yes, it's late, but they are getting getting better.
Very slowly, but they are definitely improving for sure. Yeah. For sure.
It's
because I think in Israeli culture, from what I understand, the interactions I've had, there's that divide of the old school of thinking of, oh, is bullshit, who cares, no one's going to listen, to now younger people are thinking, no. That's not the way anymore. We live in this era of unidirectional media. We can now speak out. Right. And that transition is going to take a generation, but I think it's in the process right now.
It's very interesting because the Israelis are good at so many things, but they are behind on the very thing that they get accused of controlling the whole. They get accused of controlling the whole world media. I mean, they're good at entrepreneurship, finance, technology, science, almost everything. They're like top of the world. But when it comes to media, they're behind. But the world accuses them of controlling the world media. And the more, like, everywhere I look, it seems like the anti-Israelis are controlling the world media.
That's right. That's exactly what's going on. Yeah.
So that's the one area that Israel is behind and needs to improve on. Before I read some of the super chats, you also mentioned Bitcoin many times, and I think for you, the whole fighting for freedom and so you're supporting Bitcoin goes hand in hand. In a way, like, am I getting this correct? Can you explain that? Why are they connected in a way, and how so?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, in this period, I wrote about it in my book, Honking for Freedom. There are
guys, link to the book. Link to the book is in the description. Yeah.
I'll read, in honor of who we were talking about before we started, I want to read this endorsement. I sometimes read it. I love this. It says, the Canadian trucker protest in Ottawa attracted tremendous national and international attention and was simultaneously demonized by then Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cronies in the legacy media, the minions in the CBC first and foremost among them. What really happened, Benjamin J. Dichter, integrally involved from the beginning, lets his readers in on the story of one all Canadians and all people should know, Jordan B. Peterson, who's somebody who I was speaking to on a regular basis during the convoy. He's the one person who understood what I was trying to do with messaging. But in here, there are two chapters of the book, chapters 29 and chapters 30, which are 29, this was Bitcoin moment. This was Bitcoin's moment. Chapter 30, Bitcoin proves its power. Because during this period, and I'll give some context to this, to get Justin Trudeau elected, Jerry Butts had to raise $40 million, and he did so over 4 years. It took him 4 years to raise that much money to get Trudeau elected. We managed to raise cumulatively $25 million in 3 weeks. So we became the official opposition. People have heard me explain this a number of times. So all of that money was either blocked through injunction, or some of it, the only bit that got through, which was, I don't know, $5 million or something, is currently in escrow because of a lawfare harassment case that was levied against us. And the only money that got into the hands of truckers directly was the Bitcoin, of which we raised, if I remember correctly, 21 Bitcoin, and approximately 17 Bitcoin were distributed directly into the hands of truckers because of Caribou and somebody else who was helping him. And so this was a moment where I couldn't believe it. I was in Bitcoin Miami in 2023. I think it was the year after I spoke. And I'm walking into the main hall, and I hear on stage Robert F. Kennedy. And he says, and it was what the Canadian government did to those truckers when I realized we need to have money off of the system outside of government control. So we managed to inspire people to the highest levels in government around the world to understand the importance of having an insurance policy, which is what Bitcoin is. The fact that it has all these attributes that allows you to gain wealth over time, that's secondary for me. For me, the primary thing is this is your financial freedom. You are holding your own bank in your pocket that nobody can touch. And the only reason they were able to seize, and this happened in Canada, believe it or not, the only way they were able to seize 5 Bitcoin approximately was they showed up at Caribou's house, 15 officers, OPP and RCMP with guns, and threatened him to surrender his seed phrase. And this is a guy who's never been in trouble with anything in his life, and he didn't know what to do, right? He just got scared. Anybody would, right? But this is why Bitcoin is so important. And because of this moment, it's led to all these additional unforeseen consequences that I think are positive, to the point where the Trump administration keeps talking about the Bitcoin reserve and adopting it as an asset and integrating it into government in some capacity. That all started because of this moment in Canada, where there were there were protests in almost 40 countries, copycat protests around the world. So yeah, Bitcoin is important.
Yeah, so the way I see it, and let me know if you agree, right? So tyranny, or maybe to a lesser extent of that, government overreach, happens in, I think 3 different ways. Is when the government takes away your speech, when it takes away your property, and when it tries to take away your life. So it's about speech, property, and your life. Those are the leverages overreaching government has over individuals, right? And if you could somehow find ways to get individuals not lose these things, have more control over them, then you are reducing the chances of government overreach and tyranny. And again, this event, I remember when it happened, it was so shocking because having a Western country, I mean, this is normal for a government to come and take people's money away from them, close their bank accounts, take their property away from them. But never could I have imagined that in a liberal Western country, the government will become disinterfering in regarding who sends how much money to who over something that is not illegal. It was. I think many people were shocked. And when it comes to those 3 things, speech, property, and life, I think 2 of these individuals can gain more control over it with blockchain, right? When it comes to both speech and property. And the property part, I think both Bitcoin is the main way for people to be able to own things that cannot be taken away from them. and be able to exchange without government being able to come and interfere. With speech, some other technologies, blockchain related, maybe in the future, could create platforms where there's very little like government. There's moderation, but the moderation is based on whatever the community decides, and no law and no government could actually enforce any amount of restriction on it. It's going to be based on what the community decides. So I don't know if you see it. I don't know what to do with the life one. Okay, but from these three, I think blockchain might have a solution to two of them, with property, with Bitcoin, and with speech, building platforms that are based on blockchain environments where it's based on the blockchain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think speech is a prerequisite for freedom. If you don't have the ability to speak, you'll never have any freedom. I think what you're talking about is distributed networks, and I think that's how the world is naturally evolving, whether it's on a slower database like a blockchain or not. I think that's, we'll be figuring that out over the next generation, sort of thing. But I think, I talked about this. I was on stage in, where was I? Tampa. I was at an event on Tampa, and I was on stage. I was trying to communicate to people my perspective on why it's so important to have freedom. Freedom through Bitcoin. And this is a perfect example that, most of my father's family were executed in the Holocaust. And why were so many people murdered back then? Part of the reason, it's a multivariate analysis, but part of the reason was the method for capital inflows and outflows is not what we have today. The fact that people's property was either cash or gold or housing, property, whatever it is. So it became very easy for the governments to implement legislative policy that allowed restrictions on certain groups of people to hold property or force them to sell property. But had we had a technology like Bitcoin back then it would have allowed people to take all of their assets, take everything they have, sell it before the heat, hit the fan, sort of thing, and then move it into your Bitcoin wallet and then go anywhere in the world. That is a power of freedom that everyone deserves. And in fact, we wrote about this in the book. There were people in Ukraine after the invasion that were using Bitcoin to crowdfund, vests, protection equipment, stuff like that. So I think it's very important. And people, we don't understand the value of this in the West quite so much. You would, being from Iran, and I'm shocked. Maybe it is very popular and people just hush about it. But around the world, in Latin America, it's very easy to explain this to people because they've all seen their currencies collapse and all their wealth just evaporates. Bitcoin protects them from that. So, and remember, the example where I gave of, the people in my family and others who were, executed during the Holocaust, the people who would rat them out, like people who were ratting people out during COVID, the people who ratted them out, those were, quote, good citizens. They were following the law. And as you know, being an Iranian, laws can be very infallible and or very fallible. So, and people in the West, I think, sometimes struggle to understand those implications because we've had it so easy here compared to what you grew up with.
That's a very good example. And I was thinking about your example. But I think that maybe to add to it, maybe they wouldn't even need to leave if they could keep their economic leverage in a phone. Because yes, if they had to leave, they could just take their economic leverage wherever they wanted with them. But if they had their economic leverage in a way that nobody could take it away from them, economic leverage brings you political leverage. And I don't know if the political climate would have changed against them so much if you couldn't take their economic leverage away from them, if they could maintain control over them. I don't think that it would even get to the point where they would have to leave, because again, with economic leverage, you have political leverage, and you get people serving you or taking your side. You could do so much. You could do so much political maneuvering if the forces at B are not able to separate you from your economic power. So that's another thing to take into account.
Well, I think that period of history happened for a number of reasons. I don't think economic protection alone would have saved them, but the idea, or given them leverage. But it's just in my experience. But the point of the argument is, I think every Iranian should have Bitcoin. Everyone needs Bitcoin there, especially under the regime you're under. You want to strip them of their power, start putting your wealth in Bitcoin. And I wish people who are suffering under similar regimes would understand that and do the same. I think that would be a massive accelerator to having a global Bitcoin economy, which I also don't think necessarily needs to be perceived. And Trump, I think the Trump administration, Trump himself understands that doesn't mean it's a threat to our current financial system. I think there's a yin and yang, and they can both work together, at least for a significant period of time. And so if I can help you in any way, figure out a way to orange pill as many Iranians as possible who are there. I don't care about their political opinions as long as they're on the side of freedom and they want freedom for themselves and everybody around the world, and they're anti-regime. We need to help those people.
I do have a personal channel where I try to find ways to give. I think economic leverage is very important, and I do talk about it on my personal channel to Iranians. I have also Persian channels where I talk to, where my audience is mostly in Iran. So I do. By the way, so yeah, I would be interested in talking to you about that. I have a much bigger audience on my Persian channels. One thing that people in the chat mentioned, which is a coincidence because we're talking about the superiority of Western values. Apparently today is John Locke's birthday. So happy birthday, John Locke.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay, what a coincidence.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I will just quickly read the super chats. Is that okay?
Sure, go ahead.
There's 6 of them. Okay. All right, cool. So Sean is saying, when I pointed out the background of the Pulse Club attacker, my liberal friends simply said, well, he was radicalized in the West by our culture, which according to them was the cause of his hate. Oh my God.
It's called okophobia. So xenophobia is when you hate other cultures. Okophobia is when you hate your own culture. And that's the poison that they're suffering from.
Has that ever happened before? Because I think white people hating on themselves, is this the first time it has happened in history? Throughout history, we had a whole bunch of, we had many examples of xenophobia, but you call it okophobia?
I don't. That's the term for it. Yeah.
I know. That's what I meant. The term is okophobia. So I think this is the first time in history that it has happened to this scale, or am I mistaken?
Well, I think it's a gradual slide that began in the 60s. And remember, it's taken generations to get to this point. First, they went after the arts, then they went after academia, and now they're fully embedded in our politics. So, maybe
I'm talking about the 12,000 years of history of human civilization. Okay, this is like 100, around less than 100 years old. I'm just wondering if in the past 12,000 years we had anything like this before, and I'm sure we had.
I'm sure it has. I mean, it dates back to the Old Testament. Remember praying to the golden calf when Moses was up on the mountain, and I think that's kind of the lesson.
But that's not self-hating. That's not self-hating. That's just basically worse. That's just
no. It goes. I mean, I'm not a religious guy, right? But goes against the tenets.
And also, that's a myth. I know. I mean, going against the tenets is not like I mean, those people didn't say. Going against the tenets is one thing. Saying like, "Oh, we Jews are inferior to other people." Did they say that? They didn't say that. That's what. I need to see.
Like you said, it's a myth. I don't know what people actually said, but I'm just saying the philosophical framing of that lines up with what okophobia is.
Okay. By the way, Torah in the chat is going to get angry with me that I said it's a myth. Wait, I have a lot of. So,
I know.
Ahmed just said.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go on. Sorry.
No, I have a lot of supporters who are Jewish. I went to Jewish Hebrew school. One of my closest friends is very religious, and I think it's funny. I produced this podcast for Stephen Hicks, and the next episode is called "Why Sam Harris Matters." Actually, despite the TDS and all that sort of stuff, and I think what the mistake that was made by Hitchens and Daniel Dennett and the Four Horsemen sort of thing during that era was I think they were unnecessarily adversarial towards religion. There are some people who are just programmed and need it. You and I are not to varying degrees, but there are some people who just do. And I think if they weren't so adversarial, like you said, being non-adversarial towards individual Muslims allows a conversation. And just my personal perspective.
Yeah, but I am adversarial towards religion. I'm just not adversarial to religious people. That's the difference.
I know, but I think we do ourselves a disservice without understanding the framing of other people who they get. So, like, for example, one of my friends is very religious. You know why? Gives him structure. He's like an organized structure guy for everything. And it just gives him and his wife a certain structure that they know what's going to happen every Friday, every Saturday. Like, that's how they are. That's the big thing they get from it. Aside from the spiritual thing, which, to each their own.
Yeah. Well, I could, to each their own, but I could add, but they're free to have their own ways, and I'm free to advocate for why there are superior ways to come up with culture and those spiritual feelings.
Yeah, I get that.
All right, so Amit in the chat just said, my brother got married today. Well, congratulations to your brother, Amit. Thank you for your being a member. And then Unusual AI just gave us a super chat. And Torah, who is a religious Jew. Sometimes we argue with each other over Judaism, but he's a fan of mine, and I'm a fan of him. And he gave us 15 shekels from Israel. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, Torah. Sohail from Sohail, who is an Iranian, said that it says in the Quran. Thank you for your super chat, Sohail, and also he's an admin. He said it says in the Quran not to be friends with disbelievers. Yes, it does say that, I know. And then you continue saying, Armin, Allah already knew your plan from the start. Yes, the Quran actually knows that the best way to fight Islam is is for non-Muslims to befriend Muslims. That's why in the Quran it tells you not to befriend non-Muslims, because that is befriending Muslims is the best way to defeat Islam. So there is a defense mechanism in the Quran against that, which is kind of smart, actually, to be fair. And then Sapien Jew is saying, I don't know how to read this. To see you. I don't know.
See you have a conversation with Mandana Javan from Iran, pro-Pahlavi Israel. Lead against street prayers, talk about danger of Islamic entryism. Okay.
I don't understand. Do you understand? I don't understand.
No tengo ninguna idea.
Oh, okay. So you understood it. Fantastic. Who's pro-Pahlavi and pro-Israel?
Mandana Javan? Who's that?
I have no idea. But if they're pro-Pahlavi and pro-Israel, that's great. By the way, do you know anything about Reza Pahlavi? Prince Reza Pahlavi?
I do.
Okay. What are your thoughts on him?
This was a topic in a space I was in after the bombing of the nuclear facility in Iran. And this person I've gotten to know who works in DC, in, we'll just say, public safety. He brought up the very salient point in trying to get other people to understand that the regime needs to go, which means the people need to rise up. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. What are you doing? Like, we're still waiting. Like, you should be in the streets right now. But hold on. But his argument was, to avoid a full collapse and civil war, there needs to be an option and a solution ready. Hold on, what just happened? I just lost you. There needs to be an option and solution ready for people to prevent extremism or civil war to emerge in the vacuum. And he's the best chance they got right now. He said he's only wants to do it temporarily. Maybe, okay, great. But at least somebody is willing to step up with support from around the world to fill that vacuum and prevent excessive instability. Right. So that's kind of my thought, that it's practical to get him in there as quickly as possible. So Iran,
he has the highest amount of support in Iran. The Iranian people love him. He's secular. He's liberal.
Perfect.
He's pro-Western. He's pro-Israel. He's pro freedom. He's very much pro-freedom. He's now more center-right. And I think if one way for Westerners to take the fight to their base, you could actually just support Reza Pahlavi. It's that easy, right? Because Reza Pahlavi is the greatest weakness. The two weaknesses of Islamic Republic right now from outside are, one, Israel, and also Prince Reza Pahlavi. So supporting Israel in their fight against the Islamic Republic and supporting Reza Pahlavi in their fight against the Islamic Republic is the best investment Westerners could make to solve the problem back where the problem is coming from. So just knowing Reza Pahlavi and promoting him, because most of the problems that you're dealing with regarding Islam back in Canada, United States, and Europe is being funded by Qatar and the Islamic Republic. So if we get rid of the Islamic Republic, a lot of your problems are going to go away.
For sure.
And regarding why the Iranian people are not in the streets, the Iranian people came into the streets in large numbers many, many times, right?
Yeah, I know that.
And they paid a very heavy price for it. And the government right now,
they got to keep paying the price.
I know.
And they need to get vicious right now.
They are paying the price, and it comes in waves, right? It comes in waves, and the government has become really good at crushing protests every time they start, right? Right now, the government has,
So they need to hunt their government. They need to go out and hunt.
They're unarmed. They're unarmed. The government is very armed.
You'd be surprised what is a weapon. No, it's.
I understand that. I understand that, but I think, like, I'm somebody who follows this on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I know that.
And I see the plans that are being made behind the scenes, and the activists, and you don't know the organization and the plans, okay? And it cannot be constant. Every time they come out, the government crushes them. And remember, the government doesn't just kill them. It blinds them, it tortures them, it threatens their family, and it rapes men and women. It arrests them because the government knows that many of these people are not afraid of death anymore. They capture them, they rape them, men and women, okay? And sometimes they do things to them that when they come out, they take their own lives because of the experience they had while they were arrested. The government has mastered the art, and a lot of these people are willing to pay the price of life to fight for their country. So the government is now threatening their families and their loved ones, and some of them back down when they see the government is threatening their. But I'm just saying, last time when the government felt that there would be a hint of protest, when the people came out, there were more soldiers in every street than there were people walking, and they were all armed. They all had riot gear and heavy armored vehicle in every single corner. So. I'm not saying that people are not going to try. The waves are going to come more again and again. I just want people to understand the context that the waves cannot be constant, and the Iranian people have shown that they're willing to pay a very, very heavy price for the sake of one day getting free. So I just want people to know that.
For sure. I'm just giving you the perspective of, people who are in this area in Washington, D.C. Where are your Los Pepes, like in Colombia? Because you should be chopping them up into little pieces when they're not looking.
They have, but it's not. They have, and I've seen videos of it. I'm just saying that this is a longer fight, and I think we are sitting in places that is very safe, and we have
of course.
I just want people to know that it's a lot more complicated and difficult than people assume. It's not like a Hollywood movie, right? Like, it's not, people cannot be Rambos, right? Like, it's difficult. Let me just read the last super chat, because I know I took too much of your time. I'm sorry. Shauna saying, an issue is that white isn't a real ID. Okay, the identity is Latin West, and yes, self-hate has existed before. Thomas Swell, did I pronounce him right? I know he's an economist. He's a libertarian economist. Did I pronounce his last name?
Thomas Sowell.
Called it Sowell, yes. Called it cultural cringe. The issue is that we hate something great. Yes, I know that whites is, they see it as white culture. I know whites is not a correct way of categorizing it. I understand that, but I'm just saying it from their perspective. But I see your point, Shana. Yes, and they do hate something great. What they hate, they think what they hate is white culture or Western imperialism, but what they hate is classical liberal values, and it's basically the values that has made every single society that has accepted it better and stronger and much more superior. So they do hate what makes the world better. That's true.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyways, Benjamin, I know I took double. I'm so sorry. I took double the time that I promised that I would take. So you have been very generous with your time. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I quite enjoyed it, and for those who are there, you said you have a Discord server.
Well, my Discord server is for Persian, for my community in Iran mostly, but okay. I'm trying to build a community on X or Twitter. So my community building on the English side is going to be on X, but which I need X space. I haven't gotten into that. I need maybe you could give me some tips becoming more active on X spaces.
Well, tonight, Andrea and Ron, who is a intelligence analyst who is on the ground in Afghanistan, Andrea's done some research and it's just released an article on the negative consequences, the economic consequences of allowing these Islamist NGOs to operate within the United States and what it's actually costing us. So we're doing a space tonight in 4 hours from now. If you're available, come join, or anybody else wants to come join. And that would be a good start as well for other people to get to know you. And, maybe there's going to be a little bit of cross-pollination. Because I think you do have an important message that needs to be heard as well. I know I've known who you are for quite some time as well. And if I can help in any way, let me know. Follow me on Twitter, bjdichter.com. Also, I don't know if you have a Substack. Most of my articles go to Substack, and they're picked up by Daily Bell and Zero Hedge and stuff like that. So I have about 65,000 people, email subscribers to my Substack. So don't hesitate to join, and we can talk, privately about how we can help each other as well.
Okay, guys, links to Benjamin's book and his X or Twitter is in the description, and I think to your link to your Substack is also in your bio on your Twitter, right? So go check that out. Yeah, and I also will post a link to the Twitter space that you just mentioned in the chat, in case people want to come. Check that out in 4 hours, you say, right? Yes, in 4 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
At 8 o'clock tonight.
I put the link.
I think that's an important message. We talk about waking people up in the West. I think that's something that nobody's explored. That, hey, it's costing you money for all these imams that are chanting death to the West down the street from you. That's your taxpayer money. So how much longer are you going to be able to tolerate that thing? A couple $1,000 of my taxes every year goes to that nonsense. No. Cut it off. It's time, So I think that's what her article helped illustrate.
I don't know if I would be able to make it. I'm trying to see if I could move things around, but can we set up our own space one
Sure.
day? If I can't make this one,
You know what we can do? We're trying to do these things semi-regularly on Friday nights at 8:00. Why don't we do one with you, and we'll talk about Iran, particularly, and also, I think what's important is people get confused about the Iranian diaspora. And I mean, I know from Salman and from Shia there are people, unfortunately, they're on the liberal side in Canada who are just opportunists and who end up helping the regime. So it's kind of, there's some complications here that would be good to iron out for the average Canadian.
That would be. I could speak about Iranian politics forever. Like I basically, that's what I do most of the time. Yeah. So, all right.
My sympathies.
What? Say that again.
My sympathies.
Yeah. no, it's okay. I mean, we're fighting for freeing our country, so it's
you're so close. You're so close to it, and something's got to be done while Trump is in office. And I think he's laying it out for you guys, especially with what's occurring in Venezuela. I think what's about to occur in Venezuela and possibly Brazil, that el mundo es tuyo, the world is yours, and there's got to be a way to coordinate something really, and you got one shot, and it's got to be a kill shot.
Yeah. Well, so far the Israelis have been doing most of the helping when it comes to weakening the regime, and we appreciate that. So we'll see. Okay. So Benjamin, again, guys, make sure you go follow all of the links on Benjamin's. Follow him, get his book, and follow him on X and his Substacks. The links are in the description. And again, Benjamin, thank you so much. This was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the conversation, and I learned.
Likewise.
Thank you. All right. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So just wait for a second. I will end the stream. Don't go anywhere. Just 1 second. Thank you.